Mini episode 1315 of the FDH Lounge is brought to you by Sportsology, delivering unconventional columns and webcasts about sports, TV, music, movies, and more. Follow them on the web at sportsology.com.
The FDH Lounge. You'll want to schedule your life around it.
A long time ago, on a gloomy, wet Cleveland spring night, two men stand alone amidst the late-night drizzle. Their voices echo across the vacant station parking lot as they debate the merits of the great American radio show that have been missing for far too long. On that night, an idea was born. That idea became the FDH Lounge. Welcome to the FDH Lounge.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to FDH Lounge mini episode 1315. This is FDH Managing Partner Rick Morris here, and we have one of our favorite recurring FDH Lounge dignitaries coming back on. Good friend Joe Staszak from 97.5 The Fanatic in Philadelphia, and somebody who has been part of our FDH family for a long, long time, coming on the show and breaking down any number of things from different sports. Today we're taking a look at the stretch run in the NFL as we head into an extremely wild last couple of weeks here in this unprecedented COVID season that we are dealing with in the NFL. One that has had disruptions, and yet, I have to say, probably less than most of us would have thought back in August, that the league has been able to soldier through a number of unprecedented circumstances, leading to things such as Wednesday afternoon football. But nevertheless, probably still, it's less than I thought it was going to be in the way of disruptions. We'll get thoughts on that from Joe, from the overall picture in both conferences here. And from Joe's perch in Philadelphia, we would be remiss if we didn't take a look at the worst division in the history of professional football, the 2020 NFC East. So with that said, we turn to our good friend Joe Staszak. Also, I need to mention this as well, part of the great weekly podcast, Callous Remarks, with fellow FDH Lounge dignitary Steve Callis. And they have been kind enough to have me on there. I remember going on there to crow during the 2016 World Series about how the Indians were about to put it away, and the curse of Rick Morris, so I guess I'm to blame for that, Joe.
I remember well.
Yes, I remember that. I remember because it was going to be Dennis Martinez was throwing out the first pitch, I think, for Game 6. You guys had me on the night of Game 6, and I was like, this is going to be it. El Presidente's throwing out the first pitch. He is beloved in this town. We love the 90s Indians. This is going to get everybody in the right mood, and everything pretty much went wrong from that point on. But everything always goes right when we have you on the show, Joe Staszak. A pleasure as always, buddy.
Hey, thanks, Rick. I haven't talked to you in a while, but I certainly have been thinking about it. Always appreciate it. Always a fun time coming and talk to you about some sports.
It is. It definitely is. And I have to say, unfortunately, it's not a fun topic for any of us this year, talking about coronavirus. But in this year, I guess I'll get your thoughts on that, since I talked about it a little bit in the intro, as far as the amount of disruption that we've seen. Gun to my head, I would have expected more back in August, particularly since, again, to me, the spike in numbers that we've seen during the fall, and then particularly here as winter has begun. I mean, winter officially doesn't begin, I guess, until next week as we're taping this, but realistically, you get into November, especially in our part of the country, right? America's North Coast, Philadelphia, whatever. It's been winter for a while. And so the spike in numbers has been what I think most of us would have expected it to be if we were paying attention. And yet, the league has been able to push through, certainly with less disruption than I would have thought. And I don't necessarily say that in an admiring way, because I've been saying all along, Roger Goodell, I see as somebody having the mentality of, if somebody dies, it'll just be, okay, hose off the blood, let's keep going. So I don't say that in an admiring way. I say that in the way of that, to me, a lot of times with the NFL, money trumps a lot of things, including, human decency and everything else. But nevertheless, they've gotten further than I would have thought at this point, not having to create a Week 18 yet, for example. What say you, Joe? Is this more or less disruption than you would have thought heading into this thing?
Oh, no, I agree with you. In fact, I predicted when this, before even the hockey and NBA restarted, and I was putting my money on baseball that one of the leagues would not finish, and shut down, and I thought it was going to be baseball. You remember the Marlins, the Phillies, the 17 Marlins, and they didn't report it, and then everything blew up in St. Louis. And they settled down, and I give them credit. They got through the season. The bubbles, the NBA and the Yankees did a wonderful job, and that was fantastic. And better than I could have expected. I thought the NFL, though, because guys go home after practice. They're not quarantined. They're all over the place, and some bits and drips and grabs for there in the tennis game a long time ago. The Ravens got it, and I know people were up in arms about Denver not having a quarterback, and I can kind of empathize with it. Like competitive balance, but that wouldn't be a factor. I don't know if they could have maybe altered that a little bit because that was ridiculous.
Right.
But no, I think I got to give them credit. Whatever they're doing, it's obviously working for the most part. Again, with the explosions, you can't expect it to be perfect. You can't. They're not bubbled, and they're outdoors. They're keeping fans to a minimum, and it's a football game. You know, if they don't pull out and do a wide shot, you see the empty stands, you see the fake cardboard dummies. It looks like a normal football game, and I think they, pumping the crowd noise kind of takes you away for a little bit. I think it's funny sometimes. The Eagles, and they know they do it at other places, have booze built in, and they certainly use that a lot this year. I thought there's no way that they would let themselves boo themselves, but they do, and they did often. I thought that was hilarious. But I thought they've done a pretty wonderful job, and it looks like they're getting to the finish line. There's 3 games left. Probably not going to use Week 18. 14-game expanded playoffs this year. What can I say? It looks like Super Bowl 55 in February 7th, I believe, in Tampa, is on schedule, and I'm impressed. I got to say I'm impressed because around here, things have exploded, and I know they have around the country exponentially, which we thought, you and I both thought, and I thought this was going to happen. I thought it'd be another year, and it did. But football's done a nice job. I'm impressed. I'm impressed with the NFL.
They've definitely made it further through this than you and I would have thought. And I will say, too, on baseball, just one note there, something that I thought was just absolutely disgraceful because the pandemics on the teams, the spread with the Marlins and with the Cardinals evidently came from not following the protocols. I thought it was
absolutely terrible. Terrible.
And to let the Cardinals just sit there for, a week and a half instead of having to dip into the 60-man roster, that's what it was there for, Joe. And yes, would most of those games, if not all of them, have been guaranteed losses? Yeah, but you know what? That's what it was there for. And the fact that St. Louis was not told at any point in time, dress up 9 guys and throw them out there, we don't care who they are, that made a joke of the whole thing to me. They shouldn't have been allowed to hold up the season the way that they did.
I totally agree. I think, some of Ralph Manfred's ideas, some of the things he says and does, and he doesn't know if the balls are juiced. Hell, they own the company. They own Rawlings, for God's sakes. They own the baseball company. He has no idea. Just that to me, I lost all credibility with him, but just some of the things they've done, and I just thought, but they did. They survived it. But like some of the, like you mentioned, the 60-man roster and playing with no-name guys, and it watered it down. And again, it's all about the almighty dollar. We can make a buck. Let's do it. They almost didn't have a season. They almost games, cut the salaries, and crazy, a little weird. The Dodgers finally got their championship, and I guess we'll count it. So, because if the Phillies won, I'd be counting it. So,
sure.
I guess people in LA are pretty happy about that. But they made it through, and again, I thought football would not make it this far. I'm surprised. I know they built in a couple bye weeks that worked out nicely. I mean, had some foresight, the NFL for once, because I think some of the things that they do were just asinine as well. But again, they just keep rolling right along, like you said. Keeping that money machine printing and playing football. What are you going to do? It's the NFL. Yeah,
that's how it goes. And as far as what my thoughts would have been if Cleveland had won the World Series, first of all, that'll never happen as a Dolan-owned enterprise, so that'll just be the mother of all hypotheticals. Just god-awful ownership there. But that's...
Don't worry. I thought so, too. We had only one in two in since 1883. So all right, maybe the next 50 years we'll win another one around here. We don't have debate. We're the losingest franchise in history, in the history of sports, losingest franchise. So I hear where you're coming from, man, but hang in there. What goes around comes around, and what goes around comes around.
Yeah, well, it maybe in another couple decades, the franchise will end up in somebody else's hands, and God willing, I'll be a toothless old man somewhere still alive to see it when it happens. But in the meantime, living under the thumb of the Dolans really sucks. But I mean, I guess as a point of segue, when you look at the AFC, one of the big surprises this year, most of the teams that are up there for the most part are teams that we saw as being, the teams that should be up there coming into the season. My Cleveland Browns, even coming off of a heartbreaker on Monday night in one of the big games of the year, sitting here at 9-4 right now. And again, everybody, it's so funny, Joe, because most of my friends from out of town have been like, oh, that's such a shock, this is whatever. But I'm kind of like, yeah, but this is what last year was supposed to be. Because if anybody remembers the summer of 2019, there was a thought that this...
They were the chic pick to win the whole thing.
Yeah, and, the way that it's going here, having Kevin Stefanski, who probably Monday night, as a lot of people said, salted away Coach of the Year. And the funny thing is, I always laugh about this. My 1A team that I root for is the Dolphins. So between Kevin Stefanski and Brian Flores, here I am mashing them up. Between those two guys, I'm going to be sitting pretty good for a long time to come with my franchises. But this has been a thing where I know nationally the Browns in the Baker Mayfield era have been something of a curiosity, so to speak, here. And again, probably most of the success of this offense is coming from the fact that it hasn't been dependent on him. Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, the two-headed monolith here, but Chubb in particular, for my money, the best running back in the league. But, from a national perspective, and as somebody who got to see him play your hometown Eagles earlier in the year, thoughts on the Brownies and what they're doing right now?
I love what they're doing, to be honest. I think they're a fun team to watch. They have Odell Beckham Jr., and he's just almost, I don't want to say non-factor, but he's like, not even like the main story. I mean, Baker Mayfield bouncing back, ad campaigns before he really did anything in the NFL. And I got to be honest, I think he's a fantastic actor. I love his commercials. Mm-hmm. I got to be honest, I thought Peyton Manning was great. I think Baker Mayfield is great. Some people think he's a punk, but I like his moxie. I never thought, I wasn't sure about him. I didn't think he was maybe appropriate for the number one overall pick, and the Browns have missed on some guys and have passed on a few guys, but he proved to me that he can play. He was inaccurate last year. This year, 23 touchdowns, 8 picks to 17 sacks, a QB rating of 96.6, which is above the league average, 93.3. And, it's like, Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham Jr., like having those two guys. And then you have your Kareem Hunt, who was a great pickup, and I know a lot of teams stayed away from him because of what happened, but I thought that was a great pickup. I know the Eagles were a little bit interested. I would have loved to have landed Kareem Hunt. They had Nick Chubb, who's even better. I mean, what a 1-2 punch that is.
Oh, yeah.
They wore down the Eagles when they played. In fact, the game ended up 5 points, a 5-point spread, but the Browns really had that game in control most of the way. They had the pick 6 early in the game, and it was one of Wentz's, one of his many horrific performances this year. And, I like what they're doing. They have the Giants this weekend coming off a loss, and I'm not sure if Colt McCoy's going to start now or if on the phone he's got another injury. But, I got to be honest, I love their running game. I love Stefanski, and I like Baker Mayfield a lot more the more I watch him, especially this year, the way he's rebounded from having a little bit of a rough year, and he got a lot of criticism because he was doing a lot of Hollywood type stuff, and he manages it, and he manages the ball game. He's 2,700 yards, and again, his rating is near 100. He keeps his interceptions down. He's only got 8. That's a nice ratio, 23 to 8. So, and again, Kevin Stefanski with Minnesota. I love what he's doing with the Browns. I thought that they made a good decision. Not going another year with Cousins and getting rid of him quickly and not throwing good money after bad. That experiment didn't work, and they saw it early and they identified it and made a change. And they're one of the surprise teams this year, I think, because people thought, last year was there. We jumped the gun a little bit, but I got to be honest. I'm impressed. I'm impressed with what the Browns are doing. 9-4 this year, and looking at they'll be in the postseason when it comes time. They'll be in the postseason. 7 teams now in the playoffs. That's a tough division too. The AFC North. You have the Steelers, who to me were the most vulnerable 11-0 team I've ever seen.
Right.
And they've come down back to earth a little bit. And then the Brownies and the Ravens. Lamar Jackson came back to earth a little bit as well this year, but that's a hell of a division. And if Joe Burrow stayed healthy, I know the Bengals 2-10 probably would have done much more. But coming along, I mean, that's a hell of a division. And, Browns are in second place right now, but if they play the Steelers tomorrow, I'd flip a coin.
Yeah. Oh, I would agree with you. Yeah. I mean, it's a hell of a foundation the way that it's going there. Myles Garrett, notwithstanding missing time, a contender for Defensive Player of the Year in a year where he had COVID, no less. But,
right.
Yeah, it's been incredible. The defense doesn't have much in the way of depth. The injuries have exposed that. The back seven has been atrocious a good part of the year, but although the front four has been dominating, especially of late. But a very interesting story. And when you talk about surprises in the conference, they're really one of the only ones I think to speak of, unless in the South, unless you're one of the people. I got to tell you, I saw Houston's collapse coming. I thought this was the year it caught up to Bill O'Brien, so I don't find what happened there surprising. Tennessee and Indianapolis atop the division. Most people probably wouldn't be blinking too hard at that. Buffalo atop the AFC East. I think a lot of people expected that. Miami to be doing pretty well. New England's right about where I thought they'd be. I thought they'd be about a 500 team, give or take. I thought the Jets were absolutely going to be sucking canal water, but 0-13, even I didn't see that coming. And then, in the West, Denver, the Chargers, maybe doing a little bit worse than I thought they would have been. But Vegas is right about where I thought, on the verge of the playoffs potentially. Kansas City, my pick to repeat this year at 12-1, doesn't surprise me at all. So that's where I said that the Browns, to me, are really one of the only real surprises in the AFC. I think it's been a relatively chalk kind of a year. How have you seen the AFC shaking out?
Yeah, pretty much that way. I didn't think the Jets would be this bad. I didn't know what to think of New England. I liked the fact they picked up Cam Newton in case Jarrett Stidham didn't work out, but they have nothing. They have, Brady hightailed it at the right time. He got in a much better situation. He's got receivers down there, Gronk is back, playing in warm weather. And New England, again, that's about right for what the talent they have. And even Bill Belichick, it's tough to make a good meal without good ingredients. And 6-7 this year. I love Miami. I thought, not a real surprise, but I think what Brian Flores did, the way they started out, remember they did like 96 points their first 2 games.
Yep.
Last year, their first 2 losses, and they were like historically bad. Well, they won 5-4 down the stretch. They played hard.
Right.
I liked the way they played. They gave an effort until the gun. They beat the Eagles late. Ryan Fitzpatrick did okay. I was all for taking Tua. In fact, I criticized Washington because they're staring at Ron Rivera comes in and he's staring at Dwayne Haskins, and I'm like, you guys have a number 2 pick overall. Chase Young's going to be a very nice player, but I think you guys need to go with a quarterback. And again, they picked Haskins 15th overall the year before, so I guess teams think, well, we can't, jump the gun, or we use so much draft capital to take him. No, we got to go in a different direction. No, you made a mistake. I could see, a lot of people could see. He left like 4 games. And surprisingly, Alex Smith comes back and kind of saves the season. I'll get to Washington in a little bit, but again, Tua was sitting there. He came in for Fitzpatrick. He played great the first couple of games, but good enough to win football games. And the knock on him is, he might get injured a lot, and he's small, but I love the kid. I love his arm. I love his moxie. I love what they did in bringing some of the Patriots in and just kind of filling the roster out. So not much of a surprise to me there. I do like that team. The Ravens, to me, a little bit of a surprise. I thought they'd be better. I thought we'd see another step forward for Lamar Jackson, but his record against good teams in big games, not very good. I know they won a thriller the other night against you guys.
Right.
In a tremendous game, and they covered the spread with that ridiculous lateral stuff. I thought that was hilarious. I don't bet anymore, but I have empathy for people on the losing side of those. But the Titans, I got to be honest, I'm never a big fan of Miami. I never thought he'd be a great quarterback. I know Marcus Mariota wasn't job done. And to be honest, he's done enough to let Derrick Henry really control the game. I mean, they had a big win a couple weeks ago against the Colts, and he was, one touchdown, no picks, about 235 yards. Derrick Henry had like 178 yards. They just feed him the ball. He's a beast. They use their running game. He manages games very well. I like what Mike Vrabel's doing down there. So Tennessee, to me, I didn't think they'd be this good. I thought they'd be okay. They seem to be one of those okay teams, middle of the pack. But I think they're better than I thought they'd be. And again, the Colts, with Phil Rivers sitting up there, but Frank Reich's done a marvelous job. I know everyone thinks the Eagles should trade Carson Wentz to Indianapolis because that's where Wentz thrived when Reich was here. And I do agree with that, but they are so strapped cap-wise, and it will take such a financial hit to get rid of Carson Wentz. I'm trying to calm everyone down and say, don't feel done yet. Relax. They're not going to get any value back for him. We don't need to be helping Indianapolis out. And Jalen Hurts has only played one game, so everyone just take a chill, and we'll see. But you're right. The Texans collapsed. Bill O'Brien was there about 6 years too long, in my opinion. Chiefs have won 8 straight. That loss to the Raiders prevented them from being undefeated right now. Although a lot of the games have been close. They've been a lot closer than, but the mark of a good team is I think Mahomes had 2 or 3 picks the other day against Miami, and they were up by 20 in the first quarter.
Right.
That team can run the ball. Steve Spagnuolo's defense has gotten a lot better, even though they are Super Bowl champions. And then, what can you say about Patrick Mahomes? If Aaron Rodgers wasn't having the year he's having, then he'd probably be the MVP right now. Or he's certainly in the air. So you're right. Not many surprises. I didn't think the Steelers of all teams would jump out to 11-0, but
right.
Again, I thought they were very vulnerable, and they kind of came back to earth. And they're good. Don't get me wrong, they're good, but they weren't 11-0 good. I know you are what your record says you are, but I thought they were a little bit of a paper champion, if you will. And they're a little bit, but they're still good teams. There's a lot of good teams in the AFC. In the NFC, you can only maybe pick out a handful. In the NFC East, it's just dreadful, as you know. I would say you're correct. Bills are a very strong team. I like the Browns. In fact, I think they're going to come out of the North, although Pittsburgh can clinch the North with a win at Cincinnati and a Cleveland loss, or both teams tie. But Browns coming off a tough game. But I like their moxie. I like their talent. Now, talent usually trumps all in this league. If you have a decent coach that knows what's going on, we'll get to it in a little bit, but I think that's the biggest reason the Eagles are terrible, because they don't have any talent. They need to clean house and whatnot. But going to be interesting. Again, I'm with you. I like the Chiefs. I actually come around to Andy a little bit, and so look at the players there. Look at Tyreek Hill. Look at the year he's having. I mean, they're explosive. They're just explosive. They're sound in the running game. They got Patrick Mahomes, which going up 17 spots was a big gamble and worked, and shows you what a franchise quarterback can do when you put him in good spots. And Andy Reid's very good with the quarterback. So, I like the Bills and I like the Chiefs in the East.
Yeah, those are 2 very good teams to be looking at right about now, and I think they would probably be the chalk teams as you're looking at it as far as making it to the AFC Championship game. A rematch, I think that would be from the '93 season in the AFC Championship game. So a chance for the Chiefs to get...
You are correct. That's very good. That's exactly right.
Thank you.
You're right.
It's a goofy gimmick of mine on the show, Joe, where I like to say it's a chance for the Chiefs to get revenge. They've had that circled on the calendar here. It's a chance for that organization to get revenge in that game. And
I was actually not at the game, but I was in Buffalo for that game, and I remember it because I was in Buffalo and they were good. That's when the Bills were going to 4 straight Super Bowls.
Right.
You're right. They smoked the Chiefs that year, but I think the Chiefs win. Or the Browns. I like the Browns as well. So to me, it's going to be the Browns, the Bills, and the Chiefs. Probably the Chiefs coming out. But who knows? You never know. Times. The Raiders dropped 4 on them at home, even though home and away doesn't matter as much this year. But
right.
They can look vulnerable. The thing is, they score at will. An average of 30 points a game. It's ridiculous. You have to outscore them and to put up season-high numbers against the Chiefs. Look what they did last year in 3 playoff games. They were down 10 in each game. 24 to the Texans, they were like leading by halftime. That team just is so amazing to watch offensively. When you watch what I've been watching and we've been watching around here for 13, 14 weeks, and then you turn on the Chiefs game, it's like, oh my God, why did we let go of Andy Reid? With the quarterback and some of the players he's got, and he's got a lot more talent. It's just night and day.
Yeah, and I think Andy Reid has embraced some more modern concepts as well.
I agree. I totally agree, because he did a lot of dumb things here, and I never was a big fan, but I've come around to Andy since he had some marks on his record too, blowing a 24-point lead in the playoffs to the Colts years ago, blowing an 18-point lead to the Titans a few years ago in the playoffs, and but he turned it around, turned a 10-point deficit into a championship. Once you win that championship, you're viewed completely different. So there's only about 40 guys walking the earth or somewhere in the ground, but who have won Super Bowls as coaches, and now he's one of them, and he solidified, in my opinion, his game into 10 when he retires.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And you look at it, and again, the fact that he is letting Mahomes be the quarterback that he was in college, and that this has been a recent trend in the league the last couple of years of going to more of these collegiate-type offenses. What Andy Reid has done and grown in that regard, he absolutely is a superlative coach. And again, I look at what they did in the playoffs last year, like they were still learning to win. That they fell behind in those games. Like the whole notion this year, I said coming in, because I picked them when Baltimore was kind of the trendy pick, because the thought was it had to be one of those two teams, right? You couldn't really make a case for anybody else. And Baltimore still had the questions in my mind. And I said, look, I know it's boring to pick the defending champions, but who's to say what we saw of them last year is them at their best? And they've been better this year than they were last year. So it's kind of proved my point on that. I will just say, too, as far as it goes with Frank Reich, interesting you speculating about Carson Wentz being a reclamation project for him. A lot of people have been thinking potentially Sam Darnold, who, by the way, is the guy I wanted at number one for the Brownies in 2018. I've tried to keep an open mind on Baker Mayfield. I've been way more happy with him than I've been unhappy over a period of time. And I realize it's fashionable to poop on Sam Darnold, but the Jets ruined him. I don't think it's really fair to say what kind of a quarterback he is. Just like Dwayne Haskins in Washington, but a lot of times that's the bugaboo. Haskins was a one-year starter. Trubisky was a one-year starter in college, and that can be kind of risky. You throw a one-year starter in with a bad team, which by definition is who's taking you in that spot, unless it's a good team that traded up. But you're probably going to a bad team. And Haskins, Haskins was, ruined by the Redskins last year, and we never really had a chance this year. I agree with you about Tua to Miami, because as somebody who is, like I said, they're my 1A team. I was loving that for the Dolphins when they got Tua. They didn't even have to tank to get him, Joe. The thought was they'd have to tank. They won 5 games. They got him anyway.
Games and they still got him.
Yeah. Well, part of that was the hip injury and questions about that, and that was that was the thought I had in the back of my mind. Is like, I hope this isn't Bo Jackson Part 2, but he's shown that it hasn't.
I know, right? Yeah, that would have been awful.
Yeah, that would have been because of the kind of career you knew that he'd had. The funny thing is when you look at the NFC, we'll take the East on its own because that's a mess all of its own.
Yeah,
but I mean, aside from that, I mean, maybe the East is the NFC as a whole is a little less chalky than the AFC, but I see it still as kind of the same thing. In the North, Green Bay at the top, that didn't surprise me, probably didn't surprise a lot of people. They've looked better than last year because Aaron Rodgers in year 2 of the system up there, things have gone better. Maybe Minnesota's been a little worse than people expected. I thought Detroit was going to flame out like they did and get their coach fired. I thought the Patricia era was coming to an end. So much like Houston, I saw the decline coming there. The Bears are, the Bears are what Dennis Green thought they were, a team that has an excellent defense and needs a quarterback and some kind of direction on offense, and it may cost Matt Nagy his job. Again, Minnesota got off to a worse start than anybody thought, but they've come back pretty strong since then. In the South, New Orleans and Tampa Bay at the top. Most people probably saw that. I thought Atlanta and Carolina would be a little further along. Carolina, not because of the talent on the roster, but because Matt Rule is the kind of guy who's going to get the most out of what he's got. And arguably, you could say them being 4-9 is him getting the most out of what they've got. So maybe it's happened anyways. The West, we knew the West would be a great division. San Francisco, nobody could foresee the injuries. I think that's the primary reason they're at the bottom. Maybe a little bit of a Super Bowl hangover with Jimmy G, but more injuries than anything else. Arizona taking steps forward. Seattle, I mean, it's funny how full circle they've come since the Legion of Boom days, of where the secondary is now a liability and Russell Wilson is carrying them. It's just kind of funny how it's gone full circle, but Seattle was once again a really excellent team, and the Rams looking like the class of the division. And this is one of these things where I go back to the old Seinfeld line with Jerry and Elaine, sex to save the friendship. I look at it like, fire Wade Phillips to improve the defense? I mean, I never saw that coming. And here we go. Just like sex to save the friendship, somehow it's working out. And, so, again, in those three divisions, I mean, there's things here and there that might be a little different than we expected, but I don't see a lot that's unexpected. Do you?
No, not really. I knew Seattle was coming back, and they were coming on, and they won a playoff game when it really, albeit playing against Josh McCown, but, and they got off to a real good start this year, then struggled. I mean, Russell Wilson, I think he had 16 touchdowns in like the first four games, something. He set a record. He edged out Patrick Mahomes like his first 4 games of the season last year or the year before. But Seattle, their defense historically bad. Secondary, like he. That's why we watched the game where the Eagles scored 6 points against them in the first half. This is a team that really was on pace to give up 370 yards a game passing. At the time, they've settled down a little bit. And we'll back to it. I still think he's, an MVP candidate at one point. I don't think he's one of the top 3 quarterbacks in the league.
Mm-hmm.
So I always think they have a chance. And of course, everyone criticizes the Eagles for not taking DK Metcalf and taking J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, but a lot of teams passed on Metcalf. He was injured a lot in school, albeit he put up numbers when he played. He's just a beast. I mean, he is just taking the NFL by storm, along with Justin Jefferson. This is another guy the Eagles passed on, and we'll get to that in a minute. So I do like Seattle. I like Cam Akers, the running back for the Rams, who went nuts last week. And they're 9-4. They seem to kind of have that rebound after a letdown year after that Super Bowl performance against the Patriots a couple years ago. You're right about the Wade Phillips thing to improve the defense. Really? Like, they were a pretty good defense. But the Saints are amazing, in my opinion. I never lost to the Eagles. I thought that might happen because it was a third straight road game and they're facing the Chiefs this week, playing with essentially a veteran quarterback. They play pretty well, basically. It's weird. Jameis Winston goes there to be the backup and then he gets passed over. But I don't blame him. I mean, to me, he's just a liability because he doesn't protect the football. But, in the games with Drew Brees, didn't play last year. They were 5-0. I think they're 3-1 or 2-1 without him this year. And, still almost beat the Eagles. Still, made it close. But that's going to be an interesting game this weekend. Drew Brees is, he's coming back soon, and they're going to need him because they're not going anywhere with Taysom Hill. But a lot of Brees did have that thumb injury last year. Now he's a little banged up, and they keep right on winning. They've got a very good defense. They faced a quarterback they had never seen before. Thrown off some of the RPOs and how Jalen Hurts gassed him with his legs and whatnot. I also think there was a little bit of a letdown for the Saints. But Packers, I don't know what to think about the Packers because Aaron Rodgers is having, I compared him a little bit because reports surfaced that, Carson Wentz wasn't happy about the Jalen Hurts pick. No kidding, he's probably not going to be happy. But if it affected his play, well, that's a bigger problem. Now, Aaron Rodgers, they take Jordan Love to the Packers in the first round. This duel, I mean, Jordan Love just suited up for one game, and now he's deactivated. And Aaron Rodgers has an MVP year and hasn't looked back. And, he's in his late 30s and he's just a pleasure to watch still. He is just unbelievable. But I'm not sure about their defense to sustain anything. But it's going to be interesting because no team really stands out to me in the NFC. It is tough to take down Aaron Rodgers. I mean, usually, a matchup, I'll say, well, who's the quarterback and who? And I'll probably go with that team. But if you look at the Saints, they have Drew Brees to be healthy. Jared Goff's not going to sneeze at Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers. And then, of course, you have the NFC East. But, one of those teams will probably emerge. And, And the NFC East, believe it or not, is going to host a playoff game, if you can believe that, at some point. So one of those teams is going to host a playoff game. Cannot believe it. And it could be the Eagles. Who knows? They could conceivably go on a run here. But, I try to caution everyone to not put hosting the Hall of Fame yet. It was one game, and it was against the top team in the league, but they still have some work to do if they're going to. They got to get past the Cards in Arizona this week, and I like the way the Cards turned their game around with Kyler Murray. I was never sure about him. Of his size, but man, I've never seen a keep him swinging for his height. So I like what they've done out there in Arizona. But and then of course the Eagles have the Cowboys and the Washington, who, believe it or not, they've resurrected their season. But if anyone does anything in the East, I'd be most surprised if they actually do something in the postseason. But they will be hosting the playoff game. And again, historically bad numbers for the NFL. That's the way the rules are set up, unless they change them. And they might because of this, but if not, then there you go. Then you might have a 6 or 7 win team make the postseason and host a playoff game.
Yeah, it should be the first time in NFL history that a team is a 10-point dog at home in the first round and still gets housed. I mean, that's what we're setting up for.
You're right. I'll use that on the air. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Well, and I tell you what. From doing our stuff for our annual FantasyDraftHelp.com draft guide every year and going through, one of the things I thought was most egregious, and I was doing a Facebook Live segment with fellow FDH Lounge Dignitary Chris Galloway the night of the thing. I was pretty proud of our bladder control. We went like 4.5 hours straight without having to cut it off. Never thought we'd make it that far.
Nicely done.
Thank you, Joe. I never thought we'd make it that far, but when we were in there, the one thing where I just about started screaming was when the Eagles passed on Justin Jefferson, because it was just
oh my goodness, me and our buddy Steve Counts were texting each other. I almost fell off the couch.
Yeah.
I'm like, Jaden Reeder.
Yeah.
Well, this was a no-brainer. Second of all, Jaden Reeder on a lot of boards, like in the top 5 or 6, might have been like 8. And of course, the Eagles had blinders on and just went with speed, even though Jefferson beat him in the 40 at the combines, because Reagan was a little late. Oh, by the way, it was the biggest career, in the NFL, when he comes in 10 pounds overweight. It was a no-brainer. The big SEC school had 4 touchdowns against Alabama in the semifinal. He's a big game player, and he was really upset that he lasted that long, and the team passed up on him and using it as fuel or a chip on his shoulder, kind of like Tom Brady's still done. Yeah. He's having a phenomenal year, and we're lamenting the fact that, DK Metcalf or Justin Jefferson or both, and that's why, in my opinion, they have to start cleaning the house and start at the top of the road.
And let's talk about that, because I read the excellent column that you had on your station's website about it. A really, really excellent column. I thought it was outstanding.
Well, thank you, Rick.
Howie Roseman as the GM, again, you look at what happened there with the cap situation, the way that you guys had it there. You had a couple different times in the 2010s of when the organization tried to put together a dream team as far as spending goes. And I did think that the cleanup job that he did leading into 2017, I thought was outstanding. I felt like he was a big part of the reason you guys won the Super Bowl. But I mean, here's another thing.
Everything he did worked. Everything he did worked.
If you want to steal this one, go ahead. You know who he is as a general manager to me? And I say this as a guy that I saw up front for many years in Cleveland. Different sport, different context. He's the J.R. Smith of general managers. He will have stretches where you want to send him to the Hall of Fame. And he will have stretches like right now where, your last couple drafts really have kind of sucked. I mean, no question about it. And
that's an understatement, but
I mean, and it's
analogy. I definitely will use that.
Thank you. I mean, it's the same guy. I don't get it. Like he couldn't do anything wrong leading up to 2017, and it's a thing where in this political year that we've had, this is a statement that I've heard in the political realm, but it applies in sports. And they say in politics, personnel is policy. Well, personnel equals results, if you want to call it that, to a large extent because of the talent on the roster. We talked about it before with the Browns. The Browns have a much more talented roster than they did a couple of years ago. That's part of why they are where they are right now. The Eagles had a super talented roster in 2017. And part of my draft prep every year in doing our guide is going through and looking at team needs. I'm old enough to remember when you guys didn't have that many team needs. I mean, it seems like a long time ago, but it wasn't that long ago. Life comes at you fast. And the Eagles, you guys you have holes everywhere, and it's hard to believe it's the same regime. There's no explanation for it.
There really is. The way this team, a snapshot is, how did this team win a Super Bowl? They are so bad to watch. I Game 1 against Washington this year. They were up 17-0, and they lost by 10. And it was the second worst game I've ever seen in the NFL. The first one was 5 years ago when Chip Kelly and the Eagles played the Cowboys, and DeMarco Murray had 13 carries for 2 yards. He left for 1 yard. It was awful, awful, awful. That was the second worst game I've seen. They've all been like that this year. Just terrible. And, the first good football game that we saw, at least was somewhat entertaining, was last week when Jalen Hurts was in. And I don't know what happened to Carson Wentz, but since that 11-2 run he had in 2017, he's 17-21-1. Tied the Bengals, and that was on a late touchdown run by him. He tied the game. Doug Peterson, it seems like he learned the coach on Sunday, but where was this when Carson Wentz, simplifies things, run the ball a little bit more, set up screenplays, set up plays. Like Thomas Bay came in here and just abused us, and we abused the Eagles in week 2 with his misdirections and all his shiny metal toys and throwbacks to Tyler Thigpen and Jared Goff rolling to the right, dragging the tight end, and just misdirections. And Eagles are so unimaginative, but they look like they knew what they were doing last week with a different quarterback and play calling that kind of suited his skill set. But it really hasn't been. It's a little blurred because we have made the playoffs in the last 2 years, but it really hasn't been good football since the 2017 season. We forget how bad it was in 2000. They were 5-6 both years. The only team in history to start 2-6-0, 5-6, and make the playoffs. And I think we forget about how bad it was or how painful it was. I was on a post last week trying to think about the last entertaining football game. One was last year in Miami, and they lost, but it was a entertaining game. It's been brutal football, and it really starts with Howie Roseman. Since 2016, not one Pro Bowl player has he drafted, except for Carson Wentz, who happens to be the worst quarterback in the league this year. But all pros, I think since 2012, they've drafted 4 and maybe 7 Pro Bowlers. Like it is dreck. In 2017. It was his free agent signing. Nick Foles was a great move, bringing him back, and Chris Long and LeGarrette Blount trading for J.A.J. in the middle of the season, and Alshon Jeffrey signing him, who was tremendous. An undrafted free agent running back in Corey Clement had a tremendous year. Everything he did, everyone had a career year. It was like the '93 Phillies. They were right. Are you kidding me? And then they make this run, almost win the World Series. Mm-hmm. And it turns out that, with that team and everything going well and the quarterback going down to speed, it was even better with Nick Foles. And for some reason, I think Doug Peterson can still coach. I think Carson Wentz can probably still play, although he's totally lost. He needs his confidence back. I'm not sure if those two can play together because the marriage they've had has not been good since Frank Reich left. He was the guy who really helped with the game plan. Carson Wentz listened to him because from the street in the locker room he's a little stubborn and overcomplicates things, and he tries to do things his way, whereas Nick Foles would just take what the defense gave him and throw where the open receiver was and where the play was designed to go. Wentz also has the unenviable task of dealing with a hard offensive line. They've had 12 different offensive line combinations in 13 games. They don't run the ball that much. Miles Sanders has missed time. And they don't really have any weapons on the outside. Remember last year they had practice squad guys that helped. I thought he did a good job winning the playoffs, but so much is really regressed, making bad decisions, no confidence at all. And we have a full-blown controversy Philly, but again, I maintain, let's relax a little bit, see what Jalen Hurts can actually do. But again, I think Doug Peterson deserves another chance. Carson Wentz deserves another chance, but we deserve it together. So I would keep the quarterback over the coach. So I'm probably going to, if I'm Jeffrey Lurie, and most people say, but 99% of the pundits and fans and people in the know think that because of his close relationship with Howie Roseman, he's not going to fire him. I think it's become such a national embarrassment. He has no other option than to make a change, because what's going to change next year if the same guy drafting is in place and the same guy coaching the same quarterback? So I personally think he's going to make a move at the GM position. It's going to surprise a lot of people. Either bring the GM and let him decide on the coach, or maybe bring both of them out and then bring a GM, let him decide who the coach is. But I don't think Doug Peterson's coming back with Carson Wentz still here. And they can't get rid of him because of his cap hit is $60 million. If they cut him, it's $40 million the following year. It's just, his numbers are ridiculous. He's obviously, there's no value he's going to bring now either, unless you give up picks to get rid of him. But, and again, we don't know what you have in Jalen. They're in a really tough spot because they don't know what they have. It's not like all right, we can deal with Carson Wentz and we'll take the hit and we'll deal with it because we have this guy who's going to be the next guy. Just play one game. Who knows? And, it wasn't spectacular, but I thought it was very good considering this environment. And, it's short, small sample size. The good thing about it is, I would think this is going to be the case. They're going to probably start on the next 3 games, even though Doug Peterson never admits that after the game. He waits a couple days. But, you're going to at least get a better sample for what Jalen Hurts can do, so maybe he can make a better informed decision. But, again, next year, I think, if Wentz is back, I think he's still the number one guy going into the season until we see more football like this. But I think it's there. I've seen him play well. I just think his climate is so bad, the environment is so bad, that he just needs to change, not to move him, but change the environment. Bring new ingredients and bring new pieces and bring fresh eyes and, fresh innovation and, work with the guy to his skill set. You can't just throw out a game plan to everybody. I mean, maybe it works for Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers, but, Carson Wentz might need things tailored to his skills a little bit, and he also needs to kind of maybe open up his mind a little bit, because he's very smart, maybe too smart for his own good. I think he thinks he knows everything when coaches have been around for years and are looking at things differently. He misses a lot of opportunities. He makes bad mental decisions. Still got a cannon. He can still run a little bit. I know he's been banged up, but he probably would have made it through another season of 16 games. Maybe, which is unusual because the knock on him is, he's never around. He's thrown one completion in 6 playoff games since he's been here for 3 yards. So, that should tell you something. I know the Eagles were frustrated, but I also know Doug Peterson is if you watch his face when he gets asked certain questions about Jalen Hurts, at least leading up to last week, you can tell he wants to say the truth, to tell you the truth, but he can't. I think he's he's hamstrung a little bit by the power structure, and he doesn't have as much probably he should or like. I don't think he wanted them to draft Jalen Hurts, although he said all the right things. I believe the report came out that he was pissed on draft night because he didn't want to bring in another distraction for Carson Wentz. He's already dealing with the ghost of Nick Foles, and, it can play with your head a little bit, although I think if you're a starting quarterback in the National Football League, you should be above that. But, so I find it hard to believe that, but, I have no other explanation for why Carson Wentz, not only is he bad, but his sport is bad. No one can really figure it out. It's just an enigma wrapped in a riddle.
Well, in terms of how Doug Peterson fits into Philadelphia, at the risk of turning this show into a drinking game where I keep referencing the Cleveland Cavaliers from another sport, I have another analogy, and that is I go back to my beloved Cavs. One of my favorite eras of any of my teams is the late 80s, early 90s Cavs. Love those teams. And Lenny Wilkens, Hall of Fame coach, deservedly so. But at the end, I understood why they went to Fratello, because it was a nice team. It was a team with a bunch of nice guys, and I'm not saying they weren't competitors, but a real nice team and a real nice coach the chemistry at that point in time was just kind of holding them back. And the Eagles, maybe they need another different voice, in the locker room there, although it begs the question of who's going to want to come in and, be told, hey, make Carson Wentz a winner. I don't think that's going to get Eric Bieniemy to come stampeding to your door.
I mean, you have to think about it that way. I mean, how marketable, how favorable is this spot? If the same power structure is in place, because a coach is going to want to come in and have some say about the groceries, like Bill talked about. He'd like to pick some of the groceries.
Right.
Some say in like who his quarterback should be. And, I think he has. I think becoming somewhat meddlesome. Insisting they take Arcega Whiteside over DJ Metcalf and okaying the Jalen Hurts, even though Doug Peterson was like not in a million years, and second round pick with all the help they needed. Now, it may turn out to be something that really led to Carson Wentz's demise, or Carson Wentz was going to have this year anyway, and maybe Jalen Hurts is a savior. Depends how you look at it. Who knows? But I just know that in 5 years, one Pro Bowler, and he couldn't make it through the season because it was that bad. I mean, that just tells you something. You should not survive 5 years of bad draft picking. That's why people want them to tank, and I hate rooting against them. I understand it, but I'm thinking, unless it's Trevor Lawrence and he looks at the top pick, I'm like, what are they going to do with it? You think they're going to make a prudent decision? They don't make prudent decisions with their draft pick. So I'm not getting my hopes up to have like the 4th pick over the 9th pick. To me, it's like, whatever. I'd almost rather see playoff football and good football for a while.
Well, yeah, I understand that. And when you look at it here, and this is something I'd reference to you off here, the notion of when you're talking about tanking, it's too late to tank with a capital T for this year because you're not going to get past the Jets or the Jaguars. But as far as it goes for next year, the easy way to do that is if you want to cut Carson Wentz, because that will so decimate your salary cap, having everything accelerate to next year, you won't be able to field much of a team. Unless Brian Flores is your coach, because we saw how he squeezed 5 wins out of the Dolphins last year, but I digress. Generally speaking, you can't really win that many games with the kind of roster that you would have if you had to let Carson Wentz go. Because paradoxically, the way that it works salary-wise in the NFL is you won't be able to have nearly as many live bodies there, at least good live bodies, NFL-caliber live bodies, to say nothing of star players. You won't be able to afford them at all. So you could have a real ugly year and just do a big flush and come back in 2022. What percentage would you say that, whether it be 1%, 5%, whatever chance of that happening do you see looking at that now, where they just go that way?
Do I see a chance to say that?
What percent chance do you think? Cut Carson Wentz and make next year the mother of all tank years.
I think it's extremely that they're going to cut Carson Wentz. One, they invested a lot of draft capital in getting him. They still think they have a very talented player, which I think they do as well. Three, they just need an environment. Four, it's a $60 million cap hit. They're already 65 over. 65 over and into next year. You hit it, Rick. This team can't. They're not going to be able to sign anybody. So I'm thinking that, listen, I know he's been terrible, but I still, if you're going to take the cap hit, I would, or pay him $33 million in his salary to not be here. I would rather him be here and possibly, resurrect him, because I think it's too early to give up on him. Eli Manning in his 40s, 9-7, and he threw 23 picks. He won a Super Bowl. And bounced back and won a Super Bowl. He threw 3 pick sixes in a December game against Minnesota that year. Ends up beating the Patriots. 3 years later, he throws 25 picks, and they win another Super Bowl. Brett Favre 6 times in his career threw over 20 picks, and he's won a Super Bowl. And he's regressed at times in year 4 or 5. He bounced back. I'm not saying that Wentz is in the category of the guys I just mentioned. Even Peyton Manning went 6-10 and 50. 13 and 3, 13 years to 26 picks. He ends up winning 2 Super Bowls. I think it's way too early to give up on Carson Wentz. You could maybe get me on board if it wasn't so financially, devastated, because this team looks devastated if they have to just cut him. If they have to cut him, even if they release him the following year, it's a $40 million hit. So I would concentrate on getting the right coach and figuring out something to resurrect his career first. And coach on a rookie contract, it's fine. I have no problem having two good quarterbacks. Look, they won a Super Bowl because they had a good backup quarterback. Indianapolis is paying Jacoby Brissett $21 million to get backup quarterback. So, they've got Jalen Hurts on the cheap. I would certainly give Carson Wentz the opportunity to resurrect himself. But again, like you said, Rick, they don't have money even if they keep him and don't take that $60 million hit. $5 million over the cap going into the offseason. They don't have a lot of money to sign guys, and they already have a bad receiving core. The running backs are okay right now, but the offensive line is horrific. You don't know what's going to happen next year if guys are going to come back healthy. Jason Kelsey forgot how to hike the ball. He's the only one that's been there every game, and otherwise it's been rotating. Musical chairs in the offensive line. Jason Peters hung on to him too long. $9 million they gave to Alshon Jeffrey. He's had one touchdown since last December. It's just the whole thing is a mess. Again, good quarterback play kind of masked some of that. Like it got masked last week because Jalen Hurts really played lights out. Really, this team might be in the hole for the next 5. I don't see them getting out of this for like 5 or 6 years, to be honest. And that's if they make some things.
Right. And as far as, by the way, the draft capital that you paid to get Carson Wentz, I happen to remember that because it was my team that arranged that. If I remember exactly, the draft capital that we ended up getting, I believe, if I remember correctly, Sashi Brown put that draft capital in a jar, farted on it, and lit it on fire. So that's it didn't accrue. It didn't accrue to our benefit either, Joe. If it means anything to you, it's not like it got us anywhere.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, the trade that at least in the year 2020 has helped no teams. It helped you guys for a couple of years, if not now. But in looking at it going into the season writ large, my pick was New Orleans over Kansas City in the Super Bowl. I think right now
I like that.
I would flip the outcome looking at it now. I would say Kansas City over New Orleans if we're going to get a Hank Stram Bowl, which we've come close to getting in the last couple of years, but maybe this is the year that it happens. What do you see as being the most likely outcome at the moment for the Super Bowl?
Well, I mean, anything can happen, and I think the Chiefs can be vulnerable. But the fact is, putting up 30 points a game, 33 points a game, that's hard to keep up with.
Right.
It's hard to keep that team down. You're almost always in the game if you're the Chiefs. I mean, the 24-point deficit, they erased that in 19 real minutes. It was, and they went on to win that game by 20 points. I mean, it's just hard to keep your foot on their throat. The Raiders, their only loss this year, they had to drop 40 on them.
Right.
And that happens at times, but if you're picking against the Chiefs, I mean, you're hoping for an upset, but and it could happen. Anything can happen. But I like to when I see matchups. Give me who's the coach, who's the quarterback. I'll take my money on the Chiefs. I'll put my money on the Chiefs. Yeah,
it's hard to go against that. That was my thought going into the year. I know it's boring to take the chalk, but I didn't. Yeah, but I didn't. And sometimes it can be lazy. Sometimes I go with chalk and it's lazy. Sometimes I stick my neck out and it's ugly. I think I picked Houston. I think whatever year Houston had a lot of injuries in the mid 2010s. I think they won like 2 games. That was the year I picked them to go to the Super Bowl. So sometimes I go out on a limb.
I picked them 3 years ago and they tanked.
Well, yeah. I mean, listen, I picked, you talk about going out on a limb, I picked the Winnipeg Jets to win the Stanley Cup going into the season this past year. So, yeah.
That was the team on the come. I'm okay with that. They were actually pretty good a couple years ago.
I thought they'd keep moving in that direction, but I went out.
Did too.
And I remember Russ Cohen chastised me on our preseason preview, and was like, I think their moment is come and gone, Rick. And I was like, I'm going to go out on a limb. So, see, going out on a limb doesn't always pay off. The Chiefs are safe. They're blue chip. They're a safe investment in today's economy. And yes, I would.
Yes.
agree with you on that. But what is always a safe investment in today's economy as well is counting on getting a quality segment out of good friend and longtime FDH Lounge dignitary Joe Staszak, of course, of the great show on 97.5 The Fanatic in Philadelphia, the Callis Remarks podcast with good friend Steve Callis as co-host. Always entertaining to have you two guys in the arena there together. Joe, I can't thank you enough for making time for us today. A fascinating landscape in the NFL, and that much more fascinating to get to break it down with you, my friend.
Rick, it was always a pleasure talking to you, my friend. I'll have you on my show soon, and we will we'll go over a lot of things, and always talk to you. Made my night. I appreciate it, pal. It's always fun.
Thanks, buddy. Wherever the venue, it's always a pleasure. And I remember, by the way, speaking of your show, I do remember calling my shot the night that Stipe Miocic fought for the World Heavyweight Championship in Brazil in 2016. I said,
you remember that?
Yes.
Oh my God.
I said, Stipe's. I said it on your show. I said, Stipe's bringing it home tonight, and that's going to be a good omen for the Cavs. And there you go. 52 years of history unfolding. You heard it here first. But Joe,
good call, buddy. Great call.
Thanks, pal. Thank you. It's always a pleasure with you, and we appreciate it. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in for FDH Lounge Mini episode 1315.